Hello and welcome to The Lucky Roll, an eclectic channel for eclectic games, and a big thank you to Gale Force 9 for this early copy of the Commander Scotty Federation expansion for Star Trek Away Missions. Now, Star Trek Away Missions was one of my favourite games from last year, and indeed is continuing to be one of my favourite games this year because of all the wonderful expansions that are being brought out. Not only do you get Commander Scotty in this, but apparently also there's some Tribbles inside. So with no further ado, let's open this box, see what we have inside, and see what we have for a future review video. Now, like the Captain Kirk expansion, you can also intermingle at an advanced stage this crew into other Federation crew. So if you want Scotty and Kirk to be on the same mission, you can. If you want Scotty and Picard to be on the same mission, you can. If you want Scotty and LaForge to be on the same mission, you can. So this is one of the great things, is that even if you want Scotty and LaForge on opposite teams, you can also can. So there's a great versatility in this. But because it's a Federation expansion, you can mingle them with other Federation characters, or indeed fight with them with other Federation characters. So let's unbox and see what we have inside. So opening the box for the very first time, we have, of course, the minis. We have, of course, the mission cards, the new tokens, which, as you can see, you're already got Tribbles on them. We have the character cards. We have the support deck, mission decks, including the starter deck. So when you play this game for the first time, this is the deck you should play with, and once you're comfortable, you can start mingling some of the more advanced cards to make your game that a little bit more interesting. And finally, of course, the minis. So what we'll do is we'll take all these things aside and we'll look at the minis. So we're going to start, of course, with the main man, which, of course, is Commander Scotty, played amazingly by James Doohan, a Canadian, of all things, that decided to adopt a Scottish accent for Commander Scotty. James Doohan, of course, was an incredible person. He was a World War II veteran and I believe stormed the beaches at Normandy with the Canadian Army. He was missing a finger, I think, from his time in World War II, but was such a kind of an active man. He actually fathered a child in his 80s. So James Doohan was definitely a man above men, and a great character, of course, for Scotty. So again, it's a lovely little image where he's talking into a communicator and he has a phaser at the ready. We have here the other helmsman, which is famous, which is Hikaru Sulu, a great future captain of the series and an incredible character played by George Takei. George Takei, of course, is a very interesting man as well because of his Japanese ethnicity, he was put into a kind of a camp along with his family at the outset of America's war with Japan. And it was a traumatic enough experience because he still talks about it. But George Takei, of course, is a trailblazer and other things because he is also a gay man and has become a gay icon. So a very interesting character. I often read his takes on politics and modern world scenarios, but also a great character because Sulu, I remember in, I think it was The Naked Now, where he just went mad, stripped to the waist, and ran around the place with a sword trying to rescue damsels in distress. A great character, but of course one of the helmsmen in the original series. We have here, of course, Uhura, which was played by Nichelle Nichols. Again, a lovely little mini with Uhura in the very, very mini skirt, which was famous for the 1960s and Star Trek. But Uhura, of course, was a very important character because of what she represented. She didn't have the best time on the show and was close to quitting, but bumped into Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King, who urged her to stay on the show because of the representation. What Nichelle Nichols didn't quite realize is at that moment was that not only was she a black officer on a ship, she was in charge of communications, and a black female officer on a ship. And of course, the state of civil politics in play in the United States is that was only possible in a futuristic sci-fi show. But nevertheless, after that meeting with Dr. Martin Luther King, she decided to stay on the show, and we're all glad she did, because she is, of course, an amazing character. And in the rebooted series, she has actually struck up a relationship with Commander Spock. And finally, we have another character here called Leslie, which, of course, is another character adorned with a phaser, and we'll see a little bit more about him when we check out the actual character bio. But these are the 4 Federation mini characters you get in this series. So we have here the character sheets for 2 of the characters. So we'll start, of course, with Scotty, who has command and engineering by 3. So again, he's a very, very powerful engineer, but unlike Spock, he doesn't have an extra skill slot. So they are all characters with 2 skill slots. He's also +1 attack die, and if he scores several successes, he actually earns a bonus action. We have here Mr. Leslie, who is an interesting character, because here on the back you will get a little synopsis of the characters. And what Mr. Leslie is really is he's a jack of all trades, because he's served in every single aspect of the Enterprise. So the thing about being a jack of all trades is that you're a master of none. So as you can see here, he has no specializations. So he's a very handy character in that sense, that he gives an extra defense die for all the characters he's backing up, but he is in the background as opposed to being front and center like Scotty with the engineering and being top tier for the skill tests. We also have here, of course, Hikaru Sulu, and we have Uhura. So we have here for Sulu, he's command, computers, and security by 2, whereas Uhura is communications by 2, computers, and science. Now, the interesting thing, both have an attack dice +1, and Sulu is actually very powerful. Now, I was talking about him being in the Naked Now, that he was running around with a sword. He's certainly a formidable adversary, because he has 3 attack and 3 defense, whereas most other Federation characters from the original series only had the 2. Uhura is balanced, of course, where she has only 1 attack, 2 defense, and 2 skill. But nevertheless, she has a sorry neither option, where you reroll up to 1 die when taking the challenging skill test at an operations terminal. And again, like I was talking with Sulu, he's the swashbuckler. So before discarding to reroll in an attack action, you may reroll 1 die. If you don't, your opponent may also reroll 1 die, and he rolls an additional die when using antique weapons. So a very interesting kind of caricature here. So what we have here, of course, are the tokens. So we have the beam away tokens, but we also have the Tribble tokens, which is something that's going to be very interesting, especially if in your battles with Klingons. Now, the Tribbles, of course, are from the very well-known episode, The Trouble with Tribbles, which was voted, I believe, the most beloved episode of the original series by all Star Trek fans. So it would have been a crime to not include the original series crew and not have Tribbles in there with them. So as you can see here, we have the Tribbles, and we have just the bonus 5 points, 10 points, and the beam away tokens. We have here, of course, the core mission cards, one of which is red shirts, and on the other side we have the beaming away rules explanation. But there's always 2 mission cards in these, so we're going to take them out and have a look. So the first one, of course, is called red shirts, and for each friendly character that's not neutralized at the end of the game, you get 10 bonus points. So you want to not be a red shirt with the red shirt core mission. And the other one is humanitarian aid, where you score 30 victory points if you have 3 or more aid missions in your scoring area at the end of the game. Of course, here now we have the rules for the Tribbles. So the effect of Tribbles is immediately after any player rolls a skill, attack or defense roll, while on or beamed away from the board with a Tribbles token, they must reroll 1 die of their opponent's choice. If the character is Klingon, they must reroll 2 die instead. So this is interesting because Klingons detest Tribbles. You also have adding Tribbles. So at the end of any player's activation or bonus actions, unless they have scored Deep Space K7, they add more Tribbles. To do this, they place a Tribble token on a mission board that doesn't have a Tribble token, but is adjacent to one with a Tribble token. So the Tribbles are doing what Tribbles do best, and they are multiplying. If there are no such boards, they do not add a Tribble token, of course. So there is finite space, even in space. So if you can't put down more Tribbles, you don't put down more Tribbles. You also have removing Tribbles. So any character may take an action to take a medical science or security skill test, or an attack action to remove Tribbles. Remove 1 token for each success, starting with closer tokens before they are further away. So it's interesting that they're great that they can actually block off characters and force skill tests and sign tests, and perhaps use up some of the cards in order to get rid of them, in order to get around the place. And of course we have here the beaming away rules set, which we have touched upon in the Kirk unboxing, and if you check our video you can see it there. Now the next thing we're going to look at is going to be the starter deck. So you get 2 sealed decks in this game. You have the sealed advanced deck and you have the sealed starter deck. So this is the deck you start off with to kind of learn this new faction. And once you get confident with these cards, you can kind of put in these ones and optimize your game accordingly. So in the Federation starter deck, of course, you have the support deck and the mission deck. So we'll have a look first at the support decks. So I'm just going to zoom down. So we're going to start with the first card, of course, which is the classic Trouble with Tribbles. And this was a great little episode, and actually the most beloved episode of the original series, where the Tribbles had eaten the grain and had become poisoned. And there was a nice comedic moment here where Kirk opened up the overhead bay and there was nothing but Tribbles falling down on him throughout the entire scene. And I'm sure that the crew had fun throwing little furry balls at William Shatner, trying to keep a straight face whilst he shot the actual scene. You have here the 100-meter dash. So this is a really cool little image, because you see here Uhura in the mirror universe. So as you can see, she's dressed to kill, both literally and figuratively. She's armed with a dagger, and you can see here the Terran Star Empire, I believe, with the dagger through the actual Earth. You have here a Beam Us Up event card. You have here the Disguise Biosignature. So this is, of course, a classic episode where Kirk is in disguise as a Romulan, trying to steal, I think, the cloaking device from the Romulan Star Empire. You have here a Uhura card, Healing Frequency. Of course, it's an interrupt. So you can play before rolling 1 die for a command skill test, and you take 2 communication skill tests. If you roll 2 or more successes, all friendly command skill tests for this action roll an additional die for each success. So Uhura basically is giving you a little bit of help. You have here Locate Alien Signal, another interrupt card, and you can see the lads are over the Andorian. You have Medical Tension. You have Monitor Transmissions, where you have Uhura in the gold uniform. You have the Scan for Life Signs, and I always found this interesting because for an actor, this must have been a very difficult thing to shoot, and indeed for the crew to shoot. Now, obviously, what Spock would do is he would look into this kind of little box, and I'm sure because of Star Trek wanted to be kind of nautical, it gave a periscope effect. But if you're an actor, you kind of have to hunch over, look into this thing, whilst hunched over, talk to the camera, and the camera would be kind of aiming at Leonard Nimoy's back whilst he's looking at the thing, letting him deliver the line, letting him look back into it and deliver the line again. A very odd design choice. I think that they were thinking more of the nautical periscope thing than the actual acting aspect of it. But nevertheless, that's how Spock did an awful lot of his sensor sweeps and tests. You have Scramble Comms, which of course is Uhura bringing her specialization in. We have here James Doohan doing the classic Scottish thing, and we have it here written phonetically. She cannot take no more, Captain, or she cannot take any more. Which, forgive my Scottish accent, but I'm not Scottish, I'm Irish, so best I can do. It's an interrupt action, so play after failing an engineering skill test. Retake the skill test, but roll 2 fewer die. So that's an interesting little brinkmanship card, and I like the fact that they have attributed that classic trait of James Doohan to it. We have, of course, site-to-site transport. We have here the Tactical Retreat, which is, I like this because you're not running away, you're doing a tactical retreat. And what this is, it's an interrupt card, so as soon as another character enters your line of sight, you can move for free 2 spaces away. And in case that's not enough, you have the sprint action, so you can tactically retreat a lot faster. We have here the Communicator, which of course is the classic flip up, flip down kind of communication. We have the Hypospray, which of course was really cool in the original series because it was actually like a syringe, whereas in the Next Generation it was kind of a push Hypospray button, so Dr. Crusher had a much easier time of it. We have here the Rapier, which is interesting because this was from the episode where Hikaru Sulu went nuts and ran around half naked, all sweaty, trying to rescue Uhura from deviants. A very fun episode, but he just decided to be a swashbuckling adventure, and it was just fun. I think George Takei had great fun doing that little episode. We have here the classic tricorder, which was always a cool little thing because I always liked it because it reminded me of a kind of a first aid combat medic pack that was always slung over the shoulders of frontline medics. And here it's a beautifully made little prop, but it always allowed Bones to kind of make immediate diagnosis. You have here the Trident scanner, which of course was a heavy duty scanner. And we have here, of course, the Universal Translator, which is an interesting card because it allows you to roll one additional die when this character takes a command, communications, or diplomacy skill test. Now, there's only one card of that in this, but the good things about these types of cards is if you're short one die, it allows you just to push that a little bit more. We have here, of course, the mission deck. So these are how you score the points in the game. So the first one is accessing the engineering log. So if you take an engineering skill test at any operations center and pass, you score 10 victory points. You have something similar, the access the medical log, where you score 10 victory points if you pass it at a medical terminal. And again, access the science log, where you do it at a science station. Now, this is an interesting one where, again, we see Spock doing his periscope scanner thing, where he's analyzing sensor readings. So you take a science skill test at a science terminal on the bridge only, but you score 20 victory points. We have here, answer the distress signal. And this is something, there's a huge charm to the old bridge. The Next Generation bridge was gorgeous instead. It was kind of long and comfortable. There was a really cool nuclear silo kind of 1960s modern vibe to the actual deck of the original series bridge. We have here brake tractor beam, and of course you can see the massive fantastic special effects that were in play in the original series, but to be fair, it was the 1960s and it was still incredible special effects for the time. We have here cross-connect drives, which is interesting because this is a dual action card. So you have to take a skill test at an operations and a command center, I think, with 2 characters. And if you do, you manage to score victory points. You have the Deep Space K7. Now this is the card that actually affects the Tribbles. So you score this card if you have a character at the command terminal in the crew quarters. Then place a Tribbles token in the crew quarters. So this is interesting. This is the card that starts bringing in the Tribbles. So I think I'm always going to have that in my deck just for the laughs and the nostalgia. You have here the Doomsday Machine, which is a classic episode. Now what I like here is I bought the original series remastered, and what they did is they kept the original series footage, but they cleaned up the special effects. So like shots such as the Enterprise was cleaned up and made a lot less blurry, and things like the Doomsday Machine were more crisp and clear. And you can see here from the quality of this image that they took these images from the remastered series, which is a nice little touch, and I'm glad that they did that. We have here the emergency evacuation card. So you take a security skill test at a command terminal within the crew quarters. Immediately take a command skill test with a different character to any other command terminal, and if you pass both, you get 30 victory points. You have here, give them a good home, and it's a nice kind of wholesome ending to a Star Trek episode where someone cracks a joke, they all laugh, and the credits roll. It's something they kind of make fun of these days, but it was kind of a standard fare for wholesomeness back in the 1960s. And you can see here it's a nice wholesome moment with the original series crew. We have here Scotty with the install the cloaking device, and that's one of the reasons I like the graphic design for some of these cards, because the Romulans are also a faction. So if you're playing the Romulans or the Commander Sela faction against the Scotty faction or the Kirk faction, you still have kind of aesthetic and lore cards to play against them. So this, of course, is them stealing the cloaking device from the ancient Romulan Star Empire. We have here marksmanship with the classic Federation phaser, and again, this is something that I liked about the remastered series, and I can see where they took some of the images, because when they were bringing out the remastered series, they had a choice of completely modernizing the special effects or tidying them up. But part of the charm of the original series, that some of the effects, even though they're a bit hammy, actually are part of the aesthetic, part of the charm, part of what was great at the time. So what they did is they just tidied them up. So you can see here they just added a little phaser effect to the actual phaser. It's not, kind of Battlestar Galactica or modern Star Trek Federation kind of effects, but it's still a nice nod to both the origin of the special effects from the 1960s and a kind of a tribute to it as well. We have here re-established communication, so you take a communication skill at operations on the bridge for 10 victory points. You have the repair the impulse drive. Of course, this was the engineering core back in the original Enterprise. You have repair phaser circuits. Of course, you're going to have an awful lot of repair cards here because it is the Commander Scotty deck. You have the restore transporter, which a classic image of James Doohan, kind of up in a kind of a tube aspect, which was no doubt the inspiration for the modern Jeffries tubes in the Next Generation. You have save the quadrotricale, which is, I'm not going to try and pronounce that again, but you take a medical science or security skill test at a medical terminal in the biology lab, and then roll an additional die for each mission board with Tribble tokens. Score this card if you score 4 more successes, and you get 40 victory points. So this is definitely a card you want to kind of bunch in with the K7 one. You have here Shore Leave, with Sulu being very happy with a lovely redhead. And we have here Steel Cloaking Device, where you see Captain Kirk in disguise as a Romulan trying to take the cloaking device from the Federation Star, or from the Romulan Star Empire. Now that was the starter decks, so we're going to check now the advanced cards. So we're going to unbox the support decks for the advanced cards. So some of these will be doubled up because it allows you to have more than one kind of card, and of course you have support decks and more mission deck cards. So we'll have a look at the mission deck cards first. So the first one we have is access the captain's chair. So you take a command skill test at any command terminal, and if passed you score this card for a nice easy 10 victory points with a lovely image of Captain Kirk on his command chair. We have the Cat's Paw, which no doubt I can already tell is going to be James and Kiki's favourite card. This character beams away. This character takes a diplomacy skill test and then immediately takes a security skill test. This character succeeds and scores this mission if they've scored 4 more successes between both tests, and is worth 30 victory points, so a good one to get. You have the File Mission Report for 15 victory points. You have the Get Main Computer Online, and again you can see here the classic 1960s tech, that it's all push buttons and flip switches, which is quaint but was actually really cool at the time. We have here Neutralize Threat, which is a cool one because you can see Captain Kirk fighting a hideous alien. We have here Red Alert with a couple of red shirts. I hope they survived, but I doubt it. You have Re-established Communications. Again, we've had a double of this, so that was already in the core set, so you can score this twice. You have Reroute Main Power, and a great image of the old kind of classic bridge, which is a very naval type of bridge, much more so than the Next Generation, which looked epic, but this is more what a naval bridge would actually look like. Or not, naval bridge engineering section would look like, excuse me. And we have here Restore Power to the Bridge, so this is Sulu climbing up the Jeffries tube type thing, and we have here of course Shore Leave, which is a double card. So those were the advanced mission cards, and we have here the support deck. So we'll start with the Universal Translator. So this is an interesting card. It was already in the starter deck, but it gives you an extra die on a certain roll. We have a double of the Trident Scanner, so you can double them up. You have here a library tape. Now this was interesting. So it's kind of like the original series predicted mini discs about 70 years before they came out. Now mini discs are come and gone, so anyone under the age of 20 who's watching this, you've no idea what I'm talking about. But they were cool little kind of discs that would just store tons of information. They were used for music, but they weren't desperately popular because they were quite expensive. You have here the Hypo Spray. You have here the Pad. So this is an interesting one. So shuffle your support decks, discard the pile, and put the top card into your hand. So it's interesting that it's called a pad because this is Star Trek predicting the Apple iPad about 80 or 90 years beforehand, and it kind of looks more like an Etch-a-Sketcher than the modern iPads, but nevertheless it's cool to see it there. We have here the laser beacon, so we have also the engineering kit. We have the Tactical Retreat, which of course is a free movement. You have the Site-to-Site Transport, and you have of course a double of the She Cannot Take Any More Captain. So if your first attempt at the Scottish accent is horrific, you can try again with a second card. You have the Scan for Life Signs. You have Monitor Transmissions. You have Medical Attention, Locate Alien Signal, Hailing Frequency, Evade, which is a new movement card. We have Diversion again, which is another new card, which take an opposed diplomacy skill test against a hostile character in line of sight. If passed, move the hostile character one space for each success. So that's interesting. So instead of you moving, you can actually force the opponent to move. So that's an interesting variation of the Tactical Retreat. You have the Disguise Biosignature. We have the Ceasefire, where everyone's smiling, of course, except for Spock, who doesn't show emotions. Recover 1 damage from one of your characters. Each opponent may recover 1 damage from one of their characters. So it's great that you have Klingon and Kirk smiling together, because everyone benefits from this character, the Ceasefire character. And finally, we end with the Beam Us Up. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the unboxing of the Commander Scotty Federation expansion for the Star Trek Away Missions board game by Gale Force 9. And on that note, a big, huge thank you to Gale Force 9 for the early copies of the Commander Scotty and Captain Kirk Federation expansions. As always, if you enjoy these videos, please like, subscribe, and all that good YouTube stuff. And please stay tuned to the channel, because we will be reviewing both expansions at some point in the future. So until then, good luck, God bless, and live long and prosper.